So, with this videos and others like it, I will be discussing Lisa Marie Presley's memoir, From Here to the Great Unknown, which was read by Riley Keough, her daughter, her eldest daughter, and Julia Roberts. This first video is going to be about Chapter 1, Upstairs at Graceland. Now, in this chapter, we hear Riley discuss what it was prior to Elvis adding his touches to it. Who originally bought it. It was bought from a doctor and his wife, Grace. Elvis loved that name so much he stuck with it and renamed the house Graceland. Back then, in the 50s, it was just a regular house with 14 acres. There was not a whole lot done to it at that time, but when Elvis bought it, he had wanted to put his own personal touches on it. And he moved everybody in. His dad, Vernon, his mom, Gladys, Minnie Mae, a lot of the relatives that he had left, he had them move in with him. And he even had one of the Memphis Mafia members live with him at it temporarily. They stayed there temporarily. To Lisa, that was her own personal playground. That was her safe space. That was where she felt safest and free. There was no limitations. There was no, you could do anything at that house and not get in trouble for it, basically, is what Lisa said. And the voice recording that she did, one of the tapes that she did, you could do anything and not get in trouble for it. I mean, Elvis slept a lot during the day, so when Lisa was around, Lisa raised all types of hell. I mean, the only person that she couldn't raise hell with or get away with raising hell from is Joe Esposito and Vernon, because Vernon, those two were authoritative figures to her, and she didn't like being told what to do. She hated it. But when her dad was asleep, she ran the place like it was her own personal place. She loved to raise hell. I mean, they had a group of 4 cooks, 2 in the morning, 2 in the daytime, 2 at nighttime, and they were ready to cook anything. There was everything from catfish, banana pudding, a lot of the southern foods, fried chicken, a lot of the good stuff. And that's what Lisa was raised on with Elvis. I mean, Elvis didn't have any rules for her. She didn't really like to brush her teeth or do baths or showers. So she wouldn't shower for like 2 weeks. But when she went to go stay at her mom's, her mom had to give her a strict regimen so that she would have something to follow, when she was there in California. But when she was with Elvis, this was her safe space, her happy space. This is where she could finally be free. Versus going to Priscilla's and being, on a tight schedule because of school and homework and all of that. She hated going to Los Angeles. She hated being there. And Elvis realized that. He's like, I understand you don't want to be, you don't want that. But your mother wants you to be back so that you can go to school because you're starting school, so you need to be getting ready. I understand. And then she'd flip off the fans and say, hey, fuck you, fuckers. And the fans would just smile at her and wave. One of the things that she did, one of the fans asked her to take pictures with their camera. So she took the camera. She's like, okay, give me $20. And so, she took the camera, didn't take any pictures, and then threw the camera in the bushes. So the security guards were like, okay, Elvis, Lisa threw another camera in the bushes. Do you want us to go and get it? Years later, after that, Lisa ran into the fan who asked her to take pictures. And the fan was like, I asked you to take pictures for me, and you didn't bring me back my camera. And Lisa's like, oops. I'm so sorry. Oops. But as a kid, she didn't care. Like, to her, she knew who her dad was. She knew what kind of impression he left on people. She knew that. But to her, she just loved him for him. She didn't care about the money or the fame or the fortune. She just loved being around her dad. Her dad was her safe person. They talk about raising hell in the jungle room. Her and her pals would be down there throwing the pool table balls at each other, fighting each other with the pool sticks that they use down there. How her dad would take firecrackers. There was a place behind Graceland where he hid firecrackers in there one time, and that whole thing caught on fire. And then it talks about the divorce. She didn't really like to go into detail about that, but she knew her dad loved her and she adored her dad. But she hated going in between Graceland and Los Angeles. She hated going between Memphis and Los Angeles. To her, her dad was her safe spot. And the teachers, there was one person who was not famous. It was like, well, your dad's the king of everything. Why does he get all this attention? Why is there, people gawking over him? I don't get it. And so, because Lisa took that as an insult. She's a daddy's girl. She doesn't like it when people insult her father. So she went to her dad and said, Dad, somebody's talking smack. I need you to sort this stuff out. I don't know how to handle it. I'm just a little girl. I don't know how to comprehend that. She knew what it was, but she didn't know how to deal with it because somebody had insulted her dad. And so she told her dad who it was and who said what, and they sorted it out. She ended up being nice, after meeting Elvis. And then there was the instance when Lisa had school and she had to have a parent-teacher conference, and her dad would be all dressed to the nines in his famous clothes and his jewelry and his belt buckles. He'd come up there and talk to the teacher and ask the teacher, how's Lisa doing? Is she okay in that? What does she need help with? Do I need to help with anything? I mean, he was always willing to be there for her whenever she needed him. And Lisa talks about the instances of having to deal with an ear infection, because she got those a lot. And she had to have it pulled out, extracted with water, and she screamed bloody murder, and Elvis didn't know how to deal with that. He couldn't watch her suffer like that, so he had to leave the room, and his face was white, like pale white, because he was so frightened for her. And then it was all said and done, and then there was this instance where she had to have surgery on her vocal cords, her tonsils, and she couldn't swallow. She couldn't swallow. It was painful for her to swallow. They wanted her to eat some ice cream just to see if she could tolerate it, and she kept making these funny faces, and Elvis would just crack up laughing. He thought it was the facial expressions were the funniest thing ever, and then, talked about the surgery, talked about, there was another thing in there, talked about a lot of stuff. Chapter 1, I'm sorry this is so short. Chapter 1 is probably the easiest chapter to listen to because it's not as heavy. It's, being born. And the most saddest thing, too, I'm going all over the place, so you'll have to forgive me. Lisa talks about how Priscilla didn't want to gain pregnancy weight, so she wouldn't eat any of the vegetables. She wouldn't eat protein. The only thing she ate was an egg and an apple a day. Now, when you're pregnant like that, you need to have the fruits, the veggies, a little bit of starch, some protein, have all of those food groups in each meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And Priscilla didn't do that. Priscilla didn't want to be fat during pregnancy, so she was tiny when she was pregnant with Lisa. And then Lisa talks about how her mom thought about having an abortion, aborting her, miscarrying her. Priscilla would ride horses, and typically when you're pregnant, you're not supposed to ride horses because that could cause internal damage to you and your baby. But she did it anyway, didn't care. She did it reckless because she didn't want Lisa. Lisa felt from a very early age that her mother, Priscilla, did not want her. Priscilla wanted Elvis's attention on her and only on her, nothing else. But once Priscilla became pregnant with Lisa and Lisa came into the picture, Elvis doted on his baby girl. And loved her to the fullest extent that he could as a father. Hearing about Priscilla wanting to miscarry and abort Lisa is probably the most heartbreaking thing I've heard in this chapter, even though this was the kind of introduction to what it was like growing up in Graceland, being around Elvis, having to go in between Elvis and Priscilla, Elvis in Memphis, Priscilla in Los Angeles, California. I can only imagine how much pain that caused emotionally, not physically, because here's this little girl who is Elvis's only child, and she's got people snapping, when she's a baby, she's just born, people are snapping pictures for the newspaper, and it's all over. So from the get-go, from the time she came out of her mama's womb, everybody was wanting to snap pictures and know every nitpicky little thing about her. She's had this happen since she was little. So as an adult, she grew to resent it. This video is probably going to be really short because I'm going all over the place. But this was probably the easiest chapter to read because it wasn't as heavy. As I go and do more videos for each chapter of the book, it's going to get really heavy. And I'm probably going to get heated. So I'm going to cut this one short and then go back and listen to chapter 2 and then come back and do a video for that chapter. I'm not going to be doing it word for word because I see that people who are doing it word for word are getting flagged by the publisher. So I'm just going to give the summary of it, and then give my input, my intake, and how I feel. This is just video 1. I did a short video on my thought process on it. But since I'm doing this chapter by chapter, each individual for each different chapter of the book, my opinions are going to be more intense. This was, like I said, this part of the book was the easiest to read because it wasn't as heavy. We get to see and hear Lisa talk about growing up in Graceland, her parents. She didn't really go into detail with her mother's side of it, but she did talk about Dad Elvis and Gladys and Minnie Mae and Delta. And Delta swore like a sailor. What do you want, you son of a bitch? Fuck you. I mean, Aunt Delta was the original cursing like a sailor. She would just say what she felt, and somebody be pissed off, but Delta didn't care. And I think that's where Lisa got her personality traits from, aside from Elvis. She got it from Aunt Delta, and we saw a little bit of Aunt Delta in her when she would be giving interviews. So this chapter is a lot lighter. It's not as heavy, but as I go through each chapter is going to be a little bit heavier than the first one. And my opinions are going to be a lot more intense than they are right now. So this is video 1 for the book, Lisa Marie Presley's memoir, From Here to the Great Unknown, chapter 1, summary, Upstairs at Graceland. Okay? All right. Thank you. Bye.